Hello again. It's been a few months since my last YouTube video. I posted earlier today on Instagram that I was going to be talking about film photography in the wedding industry and what's changed, and that the couple who likes, appreciates, and gravitates towards film photography is not the same couple from 2 or 3 years ago. I want to preface this talk by saying that I am a working wedding photographer, not a hobbyist. I don't take my camera everywhere with me. I don't know or have everyday carries, so you won't see videos like that type of content here. I really kind of just want to address and talk about the industry as I know it, how I perceive it, how I experience it, and share it with you all. Maybe you've been thinking about getting into wedding photography, or you already in and you just want certain insights that I can hopefully help provide you with. And this is just something that I've been thinking about lately, and it's become more and more evident as I continue to work. And it's something that I thought I would share with you. So a little bit of background: I've been a wedding photographer for 10 years now, 10 years, yeah, 10 years, based here in Los Angeles, California, travel all over wherever the work takes me. And I shoot predominantly digital now, and I used to shoot, I would say 50-50 film and digital together, and that workflow is entirely different than what I'm doing today. And I have, from what I've seen, it would appear as though it has changed for many of us as well in the industry. So if you're unfamiliar with the wedding photography industry, there are a couple terms that you should familiarize yourself with. The first that I'll talk about is fine art photography in the wedding film industry. And then you have things like dark and moody, and later on in the video I'll probably go into why I don't have any stock in either of those. So with fine art photography in the wedding industry, that's synonymous with film photography. So medium format film cameras, Contacts, Pentax, Hasselblads, and all of these things are coming into play, and we're part of kits, photography kits for many photographers. And that aesthetic hasn't left us, but I would say the tools and the mediums that photographers are using have. I think that more and more of us have shifted away from using film cameras, particularly medium format film cameras. I no longer think it is a sustainable business model. I think that I realized this a couple of years ago, or a few years back, when I saw industry leaders beginning to sell digital presets for their look. And that told me that they themselves were working in the digital realm and were beginning to kind of shift away from film photography. And that to me is really important. These are, again, our industry leaders, people who have paved the way for us. And you'd like to think that they have some high level of foresight. And so just kind of, for me, that was a big indicator of where the industry is going. And what I did for myself and my business was I immediately sold the film gear that I had and shifted over to another camera system, which was Fujifilm, and specifically the GFX camera system, with the model being 50S. And the reason for that being is that this camera and the sensor that came with it was larger than a full frame sensor. And although we describe it as a medium format sensor, not a true medium format sensor, I think Fujifilm classifies it as a larger than full frame sensor. But what that ended up doing is just created a very dreamlike rendering of the image that was almost film-like, and the closest that we'd have ever seen to medium format film. So for those of you who are familiar with the Contact 645 system, especially when paired with its native 80mm lens, which is almost godlike, the GFX came in and began to really compete with that in a way where it helped many photographers and their business with their business model as far as cutting down overhead costs of shooting film. And that's really how I was looking at it, is I was looking for a more sustainable business model, because shooting the amount of film that I was shooting, I just really wasn't seeing profits, and I wasn't really getting anywhere in that regard. Creatively as well, I was kind of in a box, sending my film to certain labs with a certain aesthetic, and even though I had worked and developed on an aesthetic that was of my own, I still felt very constrained, restricted, to an industry and kind of catering to this vibe and this look of the fine art world, and I just lost myself in that process. So once I saw that the industry was headed in this direction where digital had caught up to this dreamlike 3D rendering aesthetic that medium format film gives you, I immediately jumped on board. So I was with the GFX system for about 2 years, maybe 2 to 3 years, before I discovered the Leica Q2. And then the Leica Q2 just kind of revolutionized everything for me. And I was 100% digital, kind of promoting this idea of like, I'm not shooting film anymore and I'm not going back. I have this amazing new system and I'm no longer trying to make my work look like film. I don't have to match anything. Just the whole workflow, the whole process is just so much more seamless, and it just flows better, and it works for me specifically. You got to remember that everybody has their own journey, everybody has their own story. We all shoot, we have our unique vision, and that's what's really special about photography. So while I'm talking about all of this, I want to make sure that I'm promoting each and every one of you finds and seeks out your own voice. If it's not in the wedding industry, it's in whatever field you're doing, or whether it's street photography, portraiture, studio commercial, whatever it may be. I really always try to push for anyone who wants to listen to me to find your own voice, develop your own voice. And that's, we'll create more videos and content like that later. But back to my thoughts on film and where they are today, and couples and their perception of film today in the wedding industry. What I've noticed is that the couples who gravitate towards film today, they are a different couple than 2 or 3 years ago. So they're no longer looking at the same wedding blogs. They're no longer looking at the same aesthetic. Maybe they don't even know what fine art wedding photography is in the wedding industry. Today's couples have a sense of nostalgia with film photography. They themselves are picking up disposable cameras, point and shoots, consumer film stocks, and just throwing them in, not necessarily knowing or caring what they're doing, taking them everywhere with them on day dates, picnics, outings, road trips, vacations, honeymoons, wedding days. Like, the point and shoot camera, the disposable camera is with them. And there's this love and appreciation for that analog aesthetic, right? And it's a resurgence of this new film wave, Leica putting out a new film body in over 20 years with the M6 that's come out. But at the same time, as a working professional, you're seeing companies like Fujifilm discontinuing, their legacy film stock of Fuji 400H and stuff like that. And people were like in a panic, and what are you doing? And are we selling off all of our film? Are we shooting through it? Like, what do we do now? And so that's a difficult territory to navigate. And how do you go about, as a working professional, like in which, knowing where to take your business model and what direction you're going to take it in. And again, that's a very personal process. So you do have to figure out what's best for you. Luckily for me, I figured out what's best for me. And again, with this resurgence, right, with having these conversations with brides and grooms, and seeing the disposable cameras pop up on their wedding days and distributing them amongst their guests, they themselves having a camera on them and shooting them, I'm seeing a level of appreciation for film that didn't exist before. And in a different way, with a different approach. They don't care if it's underexposed. They don't need it to be light and airy. They love the grain. They love the light leaks. It's a vibe, right? It's more of a vibe than it is this sort of claim to like my wedding was shot on film, or this kind of elite prestige that comes with having a wedding or a photo shoot shot on like 100% film or whatever the ratio may be. So it's definitely a lot more laid back. There's, the approach is more laid back. So what does that mean to me as a photographer, as a business owner, as an artist? It frees me up. It's liberating. I'm excited to shoot film again in a way that I hadn't been since I first picked up my film camera for my business. I don't know, what is it, like 8 years ago now? It has me Googling and searching new film cameras. Do I want to buy the new Leica M6? Do I want to buy an older Leica M4 or M6? What point and shoot cameras are out there? There's a Contax T3. And so like I'm getting excited, and I'm doing all of this research to figure out a way of how I'm going to incorporate film back into my workflow, but not because it's necessarily trending, but because I think it's fun and it's awesome. And I think that anything that's going to contribute to the creative flow of the day is super helpful and impactful, and the client is going to benefit from that process, right? If you're excited, you're going to create better work, the clients are going to be happier, and it's just win-win for everyone. So this last weekend, I worked with a couple who, the bride happens to be a creative director in the fashion industry, and so she knows all about current trends and the vibes and aesthetic, and it turned out that we were like one and the same person, and they themselves had, I believe, 2 film cameras or maybe 1 point and shoot camera on them that day, and multiple disposable cameras. We were able to incorporate that. So the groom picked it up, she picked up her camera, I had them shoot each other. Their guests were shooting with the disposable cameras, they were shooting with the disposable cameras. I normally pick up disposable cameras at a wedding and shoot, like I'll shoot a whole camera that I then give back and have nothing to do with the development process. I don't insert my own aesthetic, I don't do anything. I'm just basically the trigger man and giving them like, wonderfully composed pictures for their day for them to remember that we're all taken on disposable cameras, and they just pay for it to get processed and developed on their own. And I think that's a sweet little touch, to be able to do. On this day, I didn't do that because I had multiple film cameras of my own. I had an EOS 3 with me with a 50 attached to it. I had an older Canon FTB with a 50 attached to it that I handed off to my assistant. And so it was fun. While I was shooting, I wasn't thinking of making sure that I hit every single point of the day so that I can then later go back and match it to my digital. I'm not thinking about what I'm gonna tell my lab. I'm not thinking about selecting my profile or using reference images or anything. And I had a wonderful conversation with the planner about this too, where I am using the tools available to me. So these are my Leica cameras and the Canon, film cameras that I had with me that day. And those tools are being used as they were meant to and designed. And the film images are gonna be film images, and my digital images are gonna be digital images, and neither of them are going to intersect. I'm not gonna be trying to make them match or look like one another. So I dropped off my film yesterday to a local lab, which is amazing. They're in Glendale. They're called That One Photo Lab on Instagram if you wanna look them up. And I selected standard scans, large resolution, and just to see what I get back. And there's no notes, I'm not giving them any notes. I don't have a profile with them. There's no like match my aesthetic or do this or do that. And I think that's probably also like the majority of their clients probably only get their roles developed, and then they probably scan it back themselves. They're working with so many wonderful artists in the industry, in the fashion world, commercial world, and I've seen the work that they do, and it kind of seems that way. So while I opted to get scans sent back to me, once I get those negatives, I myself am going to be diving into the studio and scanning my own stuff and see what comes up, just to be playful and experiment with that stuff. But again, the industry is kind of shifting in this direction where you can be a little bit more relaxed with your film photography. They want to see those light leaks, they want to see those imperfections, they want to see those candid moments. And again, this goes hand in hand with this resurgence in like a photojournalistic approach to a wedding day, seeing motion blur, capturing organic moments of couples in motion and depicting that motion through a slower shutter, which is trending at the moment. But once you know how to deploy it as a method of storytelling, it's not really so much a trend as much as it is, again, a tool. So that's where I am today. So a month ago, a couple of months ago, I would have told you, yeah, I'm not shooting film anymore. I don't need to shoot film. And I've also had conversations with couples talking about me not shooting as much film or at all. I think that I recently lost a wedding client because of a conversation that sounded like that, where they do want film. And I think that I just failed to educate on my business model and my approach, and didn't really understand or appreciate where they were coming from, and that they didn't necessarily want to dictate how I shoot, but was more just kind of like, we like this vibe and this aesthetic, and can you incorporate it into your workflow? And I think that once I kind of like, you gotta let go of ego every once in a while, and just kind of, open your eyes and look around and see where things are at. And so now today, presently, if I talk to a couple who loves and appreciates film, I'm gonna have a better understanding of what they mean by that. And I'm gonna have a better understanding of how I'm going to work on a wedding day by incorporating film into my day, where it's gonna be, again, maybe what I want for myself is a little point and shoot in my pocket, hopefully the Contax T3, it's nice and compact. Keep it in my pocket, whether my jacket pocket, pants pocket, pull it out, boom, like don't think about it, point and shoot, a true point and shoot, and move on, right? As to where the old medium format camera, my Pentax 6.7, 10 frames per roll, it slows you down. You need an assistant to load it so you can continue working. While I can appreciate that workflow, it's just personally not for me and where I want to take my business, or it doesn't necessarily align with the aesthetic that I have today. So I think that's it. I think that those are my current thoughts. If there's something that you felt I missed or I didn't touch on, let me know in the comments and we'll continue the conversation. I might even do a follow-up video, like a part 2. But again, to kind of recap, the wedding couple today who loves and appreciates film is not the same wedding couple from 2 or 3 years ago, okay? They're not looking at the same wedding publications or the same aesthetic. There's something more, there's a more sense of nostalgia. These are like 90s babies. There's a lot of talk of Gen Z. Our brides are getting younger, our couples are getting younger. So it's important for you guys to kind of pick up on these things, know your audience, know your clients, know your couples and subjects, and see what works for you. I understand if there's a bit of resistance, that you're feeling a little bit of resistance, and that's perfectly okay. Again, everybody's journey looks entirely different. However, if you already shoot film, I would greatly encourage you to start kind of exploring this new realm of film, with point and shoot cameras, this new approach, more of a photojournalistic approach, being able to be more relaxed about it, not stress yourself out so much, and also just cut down your overhead. Just having a few rolls, or shooting maybe no more than 5 rolls on a wedding day, I think is perfect. Even bringing disposable cameras with you, I think, is a nice little touch. Couples are really going to respond to that. But again, we all have our own clientele. Know your audience and know who is looking at your work and what they want to see and why they admire your work in the first place. So that's it for now. I don't have a sign off. Again, I'm just going to tell you all to my biggest thing, and what I want to be my greatest contribution is to continue to encourage and push you all to find your own voice, your own aesthetic. Do whatever makes you happy, shoot however makes you happy, and then the rest will follow. Your people will find you, your tribe will find you. So again, thanks for tuning in. I'm looking forward to making more of these videos. I apologize for not looking directly into the lens. I'm shooting on my iPhone, and so I can't help but just stare at myself. I'm right here. So I apologize for the lack of eye contact. My setup will change, but right now I like having a low footprint and just keeping it simple. Thanks again for tuning in, and hope to continue seeing you guys again. All right, take care.